Welcome to Do Good, Do Business, a podcast series brought to you by Business Turku from Finland. In this series, we explore how smaller companies can engage in the procurement of large international organizations like the UN, Red Cross, IMF, etc. This podcast series is part of the Promoting Exports to International NGOs project funded by the EU's Central Baltic Programme. Project partners from Finland, Sweden, Estonia, and Latvia are all working together to help SMEs discover exciting opportunities to do good and do business. I'm Timea Gál Jäger, your host and fellow entrepreneur, and today I'm deep diving into the question: how can small and medium-sized companies win IGO tenders and achieve a global impact? With the help of my guest, Juha Miettinen, CEO of Manketti Group, we will explore the answers to that question. Juha's over 20 years' experience with IGOs will surely bring us great insights and plenty of aha moments. Welcome to the podcast, Juha. I'm happy to have you here.
Hi, Timea. Great to be here today, sharing some thoughts and hopefully some insights also.
I thank you so much for your time. Let's begin by introducing you to the listeners. So, you started out as a financial advisor to the Ministry of Finance, and today you are the CEO of Manketti Group. Tell me about your road here and how do IGOs and tenders fit into this picture?
Yeah, actually, my position at the Ministry of Finance as financial advisor at the financing unit was quite exciting start for my international career, so to speak. So I was dealing with World Bank and International Monetary Fund issues there with my Nordic colleagues, and then after some private and working life turnarounds, I ended up in the innovation and entrepreneurship world, working there. Now been working there for like a couple of decades in different positions in Finland, heading a science park company and spending some 8 years in Africa, heading Finnish-backed private sector programs there around innovation and entrepreneurship and so on. And around last 8 years, I've been in the consulting world, assisting public entities, private companies on their aspirations when they've been heading to new markets in Global South. In Manketti, we have been quite many occasions involved in IGO work. We've been assisting private companies getting into tenders and writing a handbook on how to tap into opportunities provided by IGOs and developed banks and so on. From the Finnish perspective, year or so ago, we conducted a study on how to promote business opportunities for Finnish actors with some specific international organizations. So in that sense, with individual companies and on the wider scene, I've been engaged in this IGO domain for quite some time from some different angles.
That's quite some experience and plenty of history working with IGOs, plus then the handbook, plus then the study. I think we can conclude that you know the ins and outs of working with IGOs. Now, in your opinion, is it worth for SMEs to invest their limited resources in building a relationship with them and applying for IGO tenders?
Yes, basically the answer is yes. And one might say that in many cases, by the end of the day, it pays off. The market opportunity is, of course, huge. We are talking about billions of dollars or euros annually. But the other side of the coin could be that you need to put resources. There are not that many low-hanging fruits, and you need dedication, persistence, and a strategic approach, and you have to see the fit and need from the buyer's side. But it's a quite outstanding opportunity and not that well utilized opportunity, I would say. of course, it also means that it's not that easy opportunity always, but it pays off in quite many times.
And if we are now convincing the SMEs to apply for these IGO tenders, what would you say? What are the best ways of doing so? What are the best ways to starting to work with IGOs?
Okay, I think first of all there are many routes to these ones. If I start from the bigger companies, quite often they have a kind of a multiple approach to this. They might be involved in pro bono work. They might do some company social responsibility kind of activities. They have pilots and do innovation work with the IGOs. And that's also something where at least SMEs can jump in, start diving into these circles and start forming the relationship with the IGO or IGOs you are interested in working with. Of course, one direct route is to kind of familiarize yourself into this world by participating into tenders. As a starting point, one needs to have relevant references to be successful. So in that sense, even smaller scale piloting or proof of concept kind of things are important, and they are not. You don't have to have them necessarily with the IGO you're exactly targeting to work with, but it needs to be somewhere closer to that environment where they are working. So to put it in a rude way, in a sense that references from Finland are not good enough, but a reference from Kenya with another international organization, I would say would do nicely. So I would say participation into tender to get the feel and touch of what is going on. And the other way could be to start with pilots and start kind of familiarizing yourself in the circles and the specific organization.
Would you like to go more into how to do that pilot, for example, in Kenya? If a company is from Finland and needs this reference, how could they get it done?
Once again, there are several ways, but let me pick an example. A Finnish company called Tespack. They have a all-in-one solution, so to speak, to combine hardware and software to provide access to education and to power, so to speak, specifically in rural regions. Tespack has piloted their solution with several international organizations like Plan International, World Vision, and so on, just by also in Kenya. And this is the way they have been gaining traction and they've been gaining exposure and now they, so to speak, have pilot cases where they can extend to their tenders when they are approaching other international organizations. I would say that example it's a kind of a very illustrative example how you can approach the thing.
Not just that, but it's also a very interesting success story to hear about a Finnish company who is doing good and doing business and changing the world, isn't it?
Definitely so. Definitely so.
So you said that there are a few ways to get going with IGOs. One was to just start tendering, put up a profile, for example, in the United Nations Global Marketplace. The other one was to get into the circles and start building relationships. And then the last one was that start getting some references by pilots or field tests. Did I understand that correctly, or was there something more?
Exactly. Those are, I think those are the key things, and I would highlight kind of a point that it's good to try to dive deeper into what are the expectations and needs and values of the organization you are thinking of approaching. not necessarily when it comes to tenders, but in general.
I see.
And then we come to the things like trust and so on, which is kind of a thing that is always very important in these circles.
Actually, let's go more into that. I'm very curious of your answer to this. Why is it so important to build relationships with IGOs? Because we just discussed earlier that the whole process is so standardized, so formalized, that the relationship part does not seem to be as important as respecting the rules in the guidebook.
Well, relationship building now, of course, meaning two-way route that you get to know what the guys are thinking on the buyer side, but also you can make yourself known, and quite often the people who are somehow trying with or looking for new solutions, of course they get into touch with the people and companies they know from beforehand. They are probably not Googling and doing that kind of thing, but they select possible companies from the bunch they already know. So in that sense, it's good to be, and the organizations always stress the point that make yourself known, and in that sense, you start building the trust also with pilots and so on. So it's a mixture of these kind of things. Of course, for an SME, it's not that easy to be present here and there, but you have to choose your battles in that sense.
So this relationship building is more of an effort to be visible to the NGOs so that when they are looking for tender participants, you will be on top of their mind and maybe they invite you to the tender and so on and so on. Now, earlier in the study you conducted, there was an interesting finding that we discussed. And this finding was that the Finnish companies are not well known on the humanitarian market. So this visibility part, this relationship building part that we just discussed, well, it could be improved. So how could we improve it?
Okay, I think like said earlier, you have to choose your battle. You have to strategize how and whom to engage with scarce resources, and in that sense, I think it starts from the homework, and you need to familiarize yourself and somehow get to know who could be your potential target IGO, and in that sense, focus, put your focus on that one, and then choose whether you participate in tenders, where you participate in visits, events, and so on. But you need to start investing in this effort, and I would say you need to invest in this effort with a long-term perspective. We're talking about maybe years, not months. And in that sense, you get sooner or later, or gradually, you gain the visibility. At least that's also the impression from the Finnish side, from the companies who have been successful. You need the exposure, and you need to be active yourself. The organizations are not coming to knock your door.
Well, for someone with a sales background, this just sounds like properly done sales work where you research that you are a fit, then you map who you need to connect with, and then you slowly start to build a relationship. I think SMEs are rather good at that. So I think with this advice, they will know what to do next. If we go into how generally the Finnish SMEs are seen by IGOs like the UN and Red Cross, what would you say? Is there a general image about us?
There is a general image that Finns are very tech savvy, they are reliable, and they have great solutions. and Finns are expected, so to speak, also to focus on commonly identified Finnish strengths, whether it comes from digital IT world around telemedicine or e-health, water and sanitation. We have been doing our development work in these areas for decades. And of course, nowadays, Finland is in quite many occasions seen as a front runner in green circular economy and renewable energy solutions. Those are the things that people expect Finns to be active in these tenders, not in the bulk stuff like blankets and tents and so on. And of course, digitalization and green transition or twin transition, combining digitalization and green. Those are high on the agendas and strategies of these organizations. And of course, Finns have been quite successful in services, whether it's around management and so on. So there are a lot of opportunities in that sense around the corner, specifically related to these new teams coming up from the let's say humanitarian and international sectors.
That's very encouraging, and it actually answers to the question I was preparing for you next. What kind of tenders should Finnish companies apply to that they are very likely to win? And I think you listed them all pretty much. One, I think, is missing: educational solutions, right? They are in the top.
That's very true. Yeah, exactly. I think this is a lighter note now. Besides the PISA results, Finnish education system is still considered very much on the top of and world class in that sense. Education, e-learning solutions, and so on. Definitely, education is one of the key areas from the Finnish side.
So these are the tenders that Finnish companies are likely to win, not the bulk stuff. Now, have you noticed any recent trends in the humanitarian sector that SMEs should be aware of?
Well, besides these thematic areas which are brought up always, digitalization, green transition, they are big themes. In addition to that, many of the organizations are now localizing their procurement activities. So not all the things are happening in New York, Copenhagen, or in Geneva, but there are more local hubs like Nairobi and others where distributed procurement processes are done. And an example is that Budapest is actually becoming a hotspot for procurements in Europe.
Actually, in our previous podcast, Heli mentioned that for Finnish companies, it would be very important that they have all their information in English. Now, you mentioned the localizations and local offices. Is English still enough, or would they need to have then everything translated to the local language?
Well, in many, English is quite enough. In many occasions, of course, it might be Spanish. It could be French in some occasions, let's say in Francophone Africa, but I would say that English is a good starting point.
At least for the tender application phase.
At least for the tender applications. They might be in two languages, but always English is the one, and of course quite often preferable for Finnish tenderers.
Well, that's very good news considering that almost everybody speaks perfect English in Finland. Have you noticed that there would be some misconceptions the SMEs might have about applying to tenders from the UN or Red Cross?
Well, I might contradict myself a bit, but I must say that the first misconception is that you have to always be influencing or you have to be alert and you have to be on the spot when the tenders are in the preparatory phase. That is not always necessary. it's okay, but it's not necessary. And maybe secondly, the thing that people are thinking that tenders are already fixed and placed for someone. That is not the case. Like in the very beginning, I tried to highlight the point of openness and transparency. In my opinion, these tenders are truly open and transparent, so they are not fixed.
Does anything come to your mind when it comes to mistakes to avoid when doing the paperwork?
Well, I think the point I made earlier, it takes time, and you need to be precise. You have to see your fit to the tender specifications, of course, because it's of course a competitive market, and the margins, who's the winner and who's the runner-up, that's quite often quite tight. So you need to be, so to speak, you need to put efforts into this. So in a sense, that kind of a let's try mentality doesn't quite often work. Quite often disappointments will follow from that one, and then you might lose your interest that this is too difficult. Quite often it might happen that the time frame is too short, that it takes time to succeed. It takes maybe multiple times, and you learn by doing and so on. So, like I said, you need to be persistent and patient.
Let me go a bit deeper into that. So, say you see a tender that is very interesting to you, and you're almost a perfect match. Your values align, the product or service is almost there. You can kind of make it with the timeline. Should you apply, or should you look only for those where you are an absolute perfect fit?
I think perfect fit, of course, it's difficult to define where, and it's relative, and it depends on competition and all those kind of things. But the way you're describing it, I would go for it. Of course, there's always opportunity cost. You can use your time into different activities, but it's in a sense, one has to ponder that what is the opportunity cost. But in this case, I would say go for it. At least it's educative, and it's a lesson for the future.
Yes, I understand it's very difficult to define what level of imperfection we are fine with. The point I was trying to get at is that maybe it's not worth looking for perfection either. A little bit of imperfection can be tolerated when it comes to applying to tenders.
Exactly. Yeah. Of course, technical specifications, if they are very specific, and if you do not, if you're not fit with those, if you're not in line with those, then you might be excluded. But otherwise, and if you need 3 references, you need to have 3 references, and so on. In that sense, it's quite strict.
I see. And one of the biggest selling points of these IGO tenders is not just the revenue that comes with them, but the global impact these tender winners will have. So in other words, you are doing good, not just business. And earlier you gave an example of a success story, but I know you have another one. Would you like to tell us about that?
Okay, the second example comes from a Finnish SME called Pahu. Pahu's safety box is a waste bin for used needles and syringes. Product has been created to protect vaccinating personnel from infections caused by the used syringes and needles. It's been jointly developed by UNICEF and Pahu. And in 21, Pahu delivered some 12 million boxes to these vaccination campaigns all around the world. And of course, due to worldwide pandemic, the volumes have been rising quite dramatically during the last years. And they have a long-term agreement with UNICEF, and they have a certification for their card box, and they deliver boxes to Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and to Central America. And in many cases, they are delivering their products as part of a bigger consortium headed by bigger international medical companies. So it's a nice example of joint collaboration, joint development, a quite small company partnering with bigger entities and supplying all over the world.
That's actually a beautiful story of how you can do good and do business. And as I was listening to you, I think it unites all the points that you made earlier. You said it's very important not to treat this as a low-hanging fruit, to build relationships with others with whom you can team up, and then to treat this as a strategic long-term decision. And they did just that, didn't they?
That's true, and so it's quite remarkable
It is.
from their viewpoint. And it's of course a niche product, but it's also indication that it's so to speak high tech from Finland. Doesn't sound that high tech, but it's high tech, and it's jointly developed with the IGO. So I think, like you said, many points that I've been trying to highlight and illustrate comes together with this Bahu example.
Indeed, and also sends out the message that small Finnish companies can do it and can have a large global footprint. Now, we went through so many great points. I just want to give you a chance to think about if there would be any other advice that you would still like to give out to the SMEs listening today who maybe got now interested in the IGO tenders. Is there something we skipped?
No, I think I'm repeating myself, but I think it's good. See the fit, needs and values. Do your homework. Do not be afraid of the paperwork. Expose yourself. Be visible. Dive deeper into these circles. Be active. Network and talk to the people who have been in the rodeo already. So peer-to-peer talks and networks are invaluable. Use outside resources, like some of the Finnish entities like Business Turku, Business Tampere, Business Finland. They've been already mentioned. They are there to help you, and there are dedicated people to assist you. Please be in contact. And of course, there are some guys like Manketti and me who can be of assistance.
That's such a great summary. And I think we managed to cover everything and package it nicely into a tight little package. So I'm very, very happy that I had this chance to have this interview with you and dig your brains on all the ins and outs of IGO tenders. I thank you so much for this super insightful conversation and for your time today.
Thank you, Timea. Thanks for having me. It was a great pleasure.
And if this podcast got you thinking about expanding your business, don't hesitate to get in touch with Business Turku or Business Tampere. Their experts are ready to help you with your business journey. And it doesn't matter if you are just starting out, getting ready to expand, or indeed you are looking to secure deals with international organizations. They can help you in all that. And if you are listening to this from abroad, get in touch with one of their project partners, Technopole in Estonia, RISE in Sweden, or the IT cluster in Latvia. Thanks to the Central Baltic Program for making this possible. My name is Timea Gál Jäger, and it was a pleasure having you to listen in today. See you around. Bye-bye.